My name is Chidinma Okonkwo, and I need to tell you about the night my mother left me and my twin sister in a snowstorm to die. We were 3 years old. She wrapped us in a single blanket, placed us behind a dumpster in an alley, and walked away to marry a billionaire. What she didn't know was that one of us would survive, and 25 years later, I would find her living in a mansion, pretending we never existed. This story doesn't have a happy ending. There's no justice, no redemption, no fairy tale revenge. This is about what happens when evil wins, when the villain gets everything she wanted, and when the only thing left is the truth. If you think you can handle that, hit subscribe, because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you believe about mothers and love. My sister Kiamaka didn't survive that night, but I did, and I spent 25 years wondering why. Before we continue, comment where you are watching from, and subscribe to Tales After Dark for more stories like this. I don't remember the cold. I was too young. But I remember my sister's face, or at least I think I do. Sometimes I wonder if I'm remembering her or just looking in a mirror, since we were identical. The doctors said I survived because Chiamaka wrapped her body around mine. She was 3 years old, and somehow she knew to shield me. By the time someone found us the next morning, she had already frozen to death, but her body kept me warm enough to live. For years, I had nothing. No memories of our mother. No name, no identity. The woman who found us, Mrs. Adayeze Nwesu, a street food vendor, heard crying from behind the dumpster. She thought it was a cat. Instead, she found 2 little girls in matching pink dresses, one alive, one dead, still holding each other. Mrs. Adayeze couldn't afford to raise me, but she did anyway. She was a widow with 3 children of her own in a cramped 2-room apartment in the poorest part of Lagos. She fed me with money she didn't have. She loved me even though I wasn't hers. When people asked why she took in a strange child, she'd say, "God sent her to me." I believed her because I had to believe in something. Growing up, I had nightmares. Always the same one. A woman's face, beautiful and cold, looking down at me with empty eyes, then turning away, walking away, her heels clicking on pavement. I'd wake up screaming, and Mrs. Adaza would hold me until I fell back asleep. "Your mind is trying to remember," she'd say, "but maybe some things are better forgotten." I disagreed. I needed to know, who was the woman who left us? Why did she do it? And most importantly, who was my sister? Who was I? The police investigated, of course, but it went nowhere. No missing children reports matched our description. No one came looking for us. It was as if we never existed. They buried Kiamaka in a pauper's grave with a marker that read, "Unknown child. May God remember her name." I visited that grave every year on the anniversary. I'd bring flowers I couldn't afford and make a promise. "I'll find out who we are. I'll make sure you're not forgotten." I kept that promise. When I turned 18, I got access to the police file. There wasn't much, just photos from that morning, witness statements, and one detail that everyone had overlooked, the blanket. It wasn't some cheap thing. It was expensive, embroidered with tiny flowers, the kind of blanket wealthy people buy. The police had kept it as evidence, never claimed, gathering dust in some evidence locker. I convinced them to let me see it. And there, so small I almost missed it, was a monogram in the corner, OE, 2 letters. That was all I had. I spent 7 years searching. I worked 3 jobs, morning shift at a call center, afternoons cleaning offices, nights as a waitress. Every spare naira went into my investigation. I hired a private investigator who took my money and disappeared. I joined online forums about missing children. I contacted every adoption agency, every hospital, every orphanage. Nothing. Then, 3 months ago, I got lucky. I was cleaning an office building in Victoria Island, the wealthy part of Lagos where I definitely didn't belong. I was emptying trash bins when I saw a magazine someone had thrown away. On the cover was a photo spread. Nigeria's power couples, the billionaires who run our world. And there she was. I knew her face the moment I saw it. It was the face from my nightmares, just older, high cheekbones, cold eyes, that same empty expression. Her name was underneath the photo, Obiageli Ezinni Madu, OE, the same initials from the blanket. The article described her as a self-made philanthropist married to Chief Obinna Madu, one of Nigeria's richest men. They'd been married for 25 years, exactly the same amount of time I'd been alive. The article gushed about her charity work, her perfect life, her dedication to helping abandoned children. The irony made me physically sick. I stared at that photo for hours. Then I stole the magazine and went home to plan. I became obsessed. I needed to be absolutely sure before I confronted her. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I stalked her. Obiageli Madu lived in a mansion in Ikoyi, the kind of place with gates taller than trees and security guards who looked like they'd kill you just for looking wrong. She drove a Mercedes. She wore designer everything. She attended galas and charity events where single plates of food cost more than Mrs. Adayeze made in a month. I watched her for weeks. I learned her routine. Monday spa appointments, Wednesday lunch with her society friends, Friday visits to her charity foundation for abandoned children. Yes, you heard that right. The woman who abandoned her own children ran a charity for abandoned children. The universe has a sick sense of humor. But I needed more than observations. I needed proof, so I did something crazy. I applied for a job at her foundation. The Madu Foundation for Forgotten Children, that's what she called it, Forgotten Children. I wanted to laugh and scream at the same time. I submitted my application with a fake name, Adayeze Nwosu, named after the woman who actually saved me, and a fake background. I had enough office experience from my cleaning jobs to seem qualified for an administrative assistant position. 2 weeks later, I got called for an interview. The foundation office was beautiful, of course. Marble floors, expensive art, photos of Obiageli posing with orphans like props. I sat in the waiting room, my heart pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. Then she walked in. She passed right by me, looked directly at me, and there was nothing. No recognition, no pause, no flicker of anything. I was a stranger, a face in a crowd, someone whose existence didn't matter enough to remember. I got the job. For the next month, I worked 15 feet from the woman who tried to kill me. I made her coffee. I organized her files. I listened to her talk about her passion for helping unfortunate children. She'd say things like, "These poor babies deserve a chance at life," and I'd smile and nod while my hands shook with rage. But I was patient. I was searching for something specific, proof, photos, documents, anything that connected her to me and Chiamaka. And then, one Friday when she left early for a spa appointment, I found it. Her personal office had a locked drawer in her desk. I'd watched her open it a few times. She kept a key on a chain around her neck. But that day, she'd been in a hurry, and she'd left the key in the lock. Inside the drawer was a folder. Just one, buried under expired passports and old tax documents. The label said "before" in her handwriting. I opened it. Inside were photos. A younger Obiageli, maybe 22 or 23, visibly pregnant, very pregnant, twins pregnant. In another photo, she was holding 2 babies in matching pink dresses, the same dresses we'd been wearing that night. On the back of one photo, written in faded ink, Chidinma and Chiamaka, born April 15, 1999. She'd named us, she'd held us, she'd dressed us, and then she'd thrown us away. There were other documents, a letter from Chief Madu, dated 3 months before that night. It read, "Obiageli, I have made my intentions clear. I will marry you and secure your future beyond your wildest dreams, but I cannot raise another man's children. You must make a choice, the life I offer, or the life you have. There is no compromise. I await your decision." Another man's children. We weren't Chief Madu's daughters. We were someone else's. An inconvenience, an obstacle to her perfect, wealthy life. There was one more document, a death certificate for Chiamaka. It listed exposure and hypothermia as cause of death, location as street in Lagos, and next of kin as unknown. Obiageli had kept it, like a trophy, like proof that her problem was solved. I photocopied everything. Then I put it back exactly as I found it, relocked the drawer and walked out of that office knowing I finally had her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Chiamaka. about her tiny body wrapped around mine, trying to keep me warm, about how she died so I could live, about how our mother, because yes, Obiageli was our mother, no matter how much I hated that word, had chosen money over us. Mrs. Adazi found me crying at 2 a.m. I told her everything. She held my hand and said, "What will you do now?" "I'm going to destroy her," I said. Mrs. Adasi was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Chidinma, some people are born broken, empty inside. Your mother is one of them. You can expose her, yes. You can take everything from her. But it won't bring Chiamaka back. It won't heal the hole in your heart. It will only create a bigger hole in hers, and she'll drag you into it with her." "I don't care," I said. "She deserves to lose everything." "Maybe," Mrs. Adazi replied. "But do you deserve to lose yourself in the process?" I didn't listen. I planned it carefully. I wasn't going to the police. What would they do? File a 25-year-old cold case that technically wasn't even a crime since I survived? No, I wanted something bigger. I wanted public destruction. Chief Madhu was hosting a charity gala at their mansion, the biggest social event of the year. All of Lagos's elite would be there. Cameras, journalists, society bloggers, everyone who mattered in their world. It was perfect. I quit my job at the foundation 2 days before the gala. Obiageli barely noticed. "Thank you for your service, dear," she said without looking up from her phone. I was already forgotten again. The night of the gala, I put on the nicest dress I owned. A simple black dress Mrs. Adeze had helped me buy from a thrift store. I did my makeup carefully. I looked at myself in the mirror and tried to see Chiamaka. Would she have looked like this at 28? Would she have had the same eyes? The same smile? Would she have wanted revenge too? I crashed the gala. It was easier than you'd think. Hundreds of guests, overwhelmed security, catering staff, going in and out. I just walked in carrying a tray of champagne glasses like I belonged there. The mansion was obscene. Chandeliers bigger than my entire apartment, ice sculptures, a live orchestra, women in gowns that cost more than a car, men smoking cigars worth more than a year of my salary. And there, in the center of it all, was Obiageli, holding court in a gold dress, laughing that perfect society laugh. I watched her for an hour. I watched her touch her husband's arm, kiss society friends on both cheeks, pose for photos with her arms around her children, stepchildren from Chief Madhu's first marriage, because of course she never had more children after us. Why would she? She'd already proven she couldn't be bothered. At 10 p.m., they made speeches. Chief Madhu talked about their foundation's work. Obiageli took the microphone and gave a performance worthy of an Oscar. She talked about her calling to help forgotten children, about how every child deserves love and safety, about how she dedicated her life to this cause. "Some people," she said, her voice breaking perfectly on cue, "don't understand how precious children are, how they deserve protection, how they deserve mothers who will fight for them." The crowd applauded. She wiped away a fake tear. That's when I stepped forward. "You're right," I said loudly, walking toward the stage. "Children do deserve mothers who fight for them, mothers who don't abandon them in the cold to die." The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. Security started moving, but Chief Madhu held up his hand, curious. Obiageli's face went pale. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm your daughter," I said. "My name is Chidinma Okonkwo. 25 years ago, you left me and my twin sister Chiamaka behind a dumpster in an alley. Chiamaka froze to death that night. I survived, and I have proof." I pulled out the photos, the letter, the death certificate. I held them up for everyone to see. Phones started recording. Society bloggers were already typing. This was going viral in real time. "This is insane," Obiageli said, but her voice cracked. "I don't know who you are or what you want, but look at me," I said, walking closer. "Really look at me. You know who I am. You've known since the day I started working at your foundation. You knew and you said nothing because that's who you are. Someone who erases inconvenient truths." The crowd was murmuring. Chief Madhu looked between us, and I saw it. the moment he recognized the resemblance. Obiageli at 23 and me at 28. We could have been the same person. Chief Madu, I said, turning to him. Did you know? Did you know she had twin daughters? Did you know she killed one of them to marry you? He said nothing, but his face said everything. Get her out of here, Obiageli said, her voice turning cold. The mask was cracking. She's clearly disturbed. She's making up lies for attention. I have DNA evidence, I said. It was a bluff. I didn't. But she didn't know that. I've already given it to journalists. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know what you are. That's when Obiageli did something I didn't expect. She started laughing. Not nervous laughter, not fake laughter, real, genuine laughter. She looked at me with those cold, empty eyes and said, "And what do you think will happen? You think people will care? You think my life will end because some street girl shows up with a sad story?" "I have proof," I started. "You have nothing," she said. "You have photos any desperate person could fabricate. You have a story that can't be proven. And even if it could be, what then? You think the police will arrest me for abandoning children 25 years ago? You think society will turn on me? Look around you." She gestured to the crowd, and she was right. I looked at their faces, not horror, not sympathy, discomfort, annoyance that their party was interrupted, curiosity about the drama, not the tragedy. "These people don't care about dead poor children," Obiageli said. "They care about power, money, and status. And I have all three. You have nothing. You've always had nothing. You're nothing." "I'm your daughter," I said, my voice breaking. "No," she said coldly. "You're a mistake," I corrected. "And Chiamaka, yes, I remember her name. She was a mistake that corrected itself. You want to know why I left you? Because I wanted more than a life of poverty and struggle. Because I refused to let 2 accidents ruin my future. Because I had a choice, and I chose myself." The room was dead silent. "I chose myself," she repeated, "and I'd do it again. Because look at me now. Look at this life. Look at everything I have. And look at you, cleaning offices, wearing thrift store dresses, living in some slum with a woman who isn't even your real mother. I won. You lost. That's the truth you can't accept." Something inside me broke then. Not just broke, shattered. Because she was right. She had won. She'd murdered our sister, abandoned me, built an empire on top of our graves, and she was standing there in her gold dress in her mansion telling me she'd do it all again. "You're empty," I whispered. "You're hollow inside. You're not even human." "Maybe," she said with a smile. "But I'm rich, and happy, and untouchable. What are you?" I had no answer. Security escorted me out. Not violently, Chief Madu was too smart for that. Too worried about optics. They just walked me to the gate and closed it behind me. I could hear the party starting up again inside. The music, the laughter, the clink of champagne glasses. Like nothing had happened, like I'd never existed. I stood outside those gates for hours. I don't know what I was waiting for. An apology? A consequence? Justice? None of it came. The next morning, the story hit the blogs. Disturbed woman disrupts charity gala with bizarre claims. That's how they framed it. Not billionaire's wife accused of abandoning children. Not charity founder's dark past revealed. I was the crazy one, the liar, the attention seeker. Obiageli's PR team was fast. By noon, they'd released a statement. "Mrs. Madu is heartbroken that a clearly troubled young woman has targeted her family with false accusations. We are praying for her mental health and wish her well." They even announced an increased donation to mental health charities. She weaponized my pain into good publicity. A few bloggers tried to investigate. They found the death certificate for Chiamaka, but with no next of kin listed, there was no direct connection to Obiageli. The photos I had? She claimed they were fabricated. The letter from Chief Madu? He denied writing it, said it was forged, without DNA evidence which I couldn't afford to get tested officially. I had nothing concrete. One journalist did believe me. She wrote a long-form piece titled "The Twins Lagos Forgot." It was beautiful, thorough, devastating. She interviewed Mrs. Adaize, found the woman who'd discovered us, tracked down the detective who'd worked the case. For 3 days it gained traction. People were talking. Hashtags were trending. Then the journalist was fired. Her editor said the piece was libelous and poorly sourced. The article disappeared from the internet. When I tried to find her, she wouldn't answer my calls. Later, I heard she'd received a settlement, hush money, and moved abroad. That's how it works when you're rich in this country. You don't just have money, you have power. The power to control narratives, to silence voices, to make truth disappear. Chief Madhu and Obiageli threw another gala a month later, bigger than before. A resilience celebration, they called it. Photos showed them smiling, untouched, unbothered. Their foundation received record donations. Celebrities posted about their inspiring charity work. The world moved on. I didn't. I became obsessed with finding our biological father. If Obiageli had abandoned us for Chief Madhu, then somewhere out there was a man who'd fathered us. Maybe he didn't know we existed. Maybe he'd want to know. Maybe he'd care. It took me 3 months to find him. His name was Ekena Obi. He'd been Obiageli's boyfriend before she met Chief Madhu, a struggling artist with big dreams and empty pockets. According to people who knew them, Obiageli had left him the moment Chief Madhu showed interest. She'd never told Ekena she was pregnant. I found his art studio in Surulere, a cramped space with peeling paint and beautiful sculptures he couldn't sell. He was in his 50s now, still struggling, still poor, still creating art no one wanted to buy. I told him everything. I showed him the photos. I explained about Chiamaka. I watched his face as he processed what I was saying, that he'd had 2 daughters, one dead, one standing in front of him, and he'd never known. He cried. This man I'd never met cried for a daughter he'd never held, and a daughter he'd never had the chance to know. I would have kept you, he said. If she'd told me, I would have kept you both. I didn't have money, but I had love. I would have found a way. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But it didn't change anything. Chiamaka was still dead. Obiageli was still untouchable, and I was still nobody. Ekena wanted to help. He wanted to sue Obiageli, to demand DNA tests, to fight. But we both knew the truth. It would cost money we didn't have, and she had lawyers who'd bury us in paperwork until we drowned. So I made a different choice. I decided to let it go. Not because I forgave her, not because justice didn't matter, but because Mrs. Adaez was right. Destroying Obiageli would destroy me in the process. I'd spent months consumed by rage, neglecting the people who actually loved me, poisoning my own life with hatred. Chiamaka died so I could live. If I spent my whole life trying to kill Obiageli, even metaphorically, then Chiamaka's sacrifice meant nothing. She kept me alive for something more than revenge. So I walked away. I went back to my jobs. I helped Mrs. Adaeze, who was getting older and needed support. I visited Ekena on weekends, and we built something like a relationship, not father-daughter exactly, but something real. He was teaching me to sculpt. I was terrible at it, but he was patient. I started volunteering at an actual orphanage, not Obiageli's performative charity, but a real place with real kids who needed real help. I read them stories. I helped with homework. I listened when they cried about being unwanted. I told them what Mrs. Adaeze told me. Just because someone didn't want you doesn't mean you're not worthy of love. And I started to heal. But this story doesn't have a happy ending. I told you that at the beginning, because 6 months after I decided to let it go, everything fell apart. Mrs. Adaeze got sick, cancer, stage 4. The doctors said she had maybe 3 months. I couldn't afford treatment. Even basic palliative care was too expensive. I sold everything I owned. I took on more jobs. Ekena sold his sculptures for whatever he could get. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. One night, sitting by Mrs. Adeza's hospital bed, holding her hand as she slept, I made a decision I'll regret for the rest of my life. I went back to Obiageli. Not for revenge, not for justice, for money. I found her at one of her charity events, another gala, another performance. I waited outside until she came out to her car. When she saw me, she sighed like I was a mosquito that wouldn't stop buzzing. "What do you want?" she asked. "Money," I said. "The woman who raised me is dying. She needs medical care. I can't afford. I need 500,000 naira. That's nothing to you." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, that cold, empty smile. "No," she said simply. "Please," I said, and I hated how broken my voice sounded. "She saved my life. She deserves—" "I don't care what she deserves," Obiageli said. "I don't care that she's dying. I don't care about you. The only reason I'm even talking to you right now is because it amuses me to watch you beg. I'm your daughter. You're nothing to me," she said. "You've always been nothing. And when that woman dies, and she will die, you'll still be nothing. Alone, poor, worthless, just like your sister. Maybe you should have frozen to death with her. At least then you wouldn't have to live with the reality of what you are." She got in her car and drove away. I stood there in the parking lot, and something inside me that had been cracked just shattered completely. Mrs. Adayes died 3 weeks later. She died in pain because I couldn't afford the medication that would have eased her suffering. Her last words to me were, "You are my daughter. You always were." I didn't cry at her funeral. I couldn't. I felt empty, hollow, like Obiageli had said nothing. Ikenna tried to help. He moved me into his studio, gave me a place to stay, but I wasn't really there. I was somewhere else, somewhere dark, somewhere I couldn't come back from. I kept thinking about Chiamaka, about how she'd wrapped her body around mine to keep me warm, about how she'd died so I could live, about how I'd wasted that life. I started having the nightmare again. The woman walking away, her heels clicking on pavement. But now when I woke up, I didn't scream. I just stared at the ceiling and wished I'd frozen that night instead. 2 months after Mrs. Adaize's funeral, I made a decision. I went to Chiamaka's grave, that pauper's grave, with the marker reading "Unknown Child." I brought flowers like I always did, but this time I brought something else. A bottle of pills. Enough pills. I sat by her grave and I talked to her. I told her I was sorry. Sorry I'd survived when she didn't. Sorry I'd wasted years on revenge instead of living the life she'd given me. Sorry that I couldn't be strong enough to keep going. "I'm tired, Chiamaka," I said. "I'm so tired of being the one who survived, of carrying this weight, of existing in a world where people like Obiageli win and people like us lose. I just want to sleep. I just want to be with you." I opened the bottle. That's when I heard it. A voice. A little girl's voice. "Are you dying too?" I looked up. Standing a few feet away was a child, maybe 5 years old, wearing a dirty school uniform. She was staring at me with these huge, solemn eyes. "What?" I said. "Are you dying?" she repeated. "Like my mama. She's in the ground too. Over there." She pointed to another grave nearby, another pauper's marker. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I hope you don't die," the little girl said, "because then someone will be sad, someone will cry, and crying hurts." "Do you cry?" I asked. "Every day," she said, matter-of-factly. "But my auntie says crying means you loved someone, so it's okay to hurt because it means you had love. Did you have love?" I looked at the bottle in my hand, then at Chiamaka's grave, then at this little girl who'd lost her mother and was still here, still surviving, still believing that love mattered. "Yes," I whispered. "I had so much love." "Then don't die," she said, "because love shouldn't die too." She walked away, back to her own grief, and I sat there holding that bottle for hours. I didn't take the pills that day, but I kept them, just in case. It's been a year since that day at the cemetery. I'm still here. I'm still surviving. I don't know if that makes me strong or just stubborn. Obiageli is still living her perfect life. Chief Madu just made the Forbes list. Their foundation just won an international award for humanitarian work. They were on the cover of another magazine last month, smiling, unbothered, untouched by consequences. Evil won, that's the truth. In real life, the villain doesn't always get caught. Justice doesn't always prevail. Sometimes bad people live long, happy lives while good people suffer and die. That's not a lesson anyone wants to hear, but it's the truth. I still volunteer at the orphanage. I still see Kenna, and we make terrible sculptures together. I still visit Chiamaka's grave, though I've stopped bringing flowers I can't afford. Now I just sit and talk to her. I tell her about the little girl from the cemetery. I tell her about the kids at the orphanage. I tell her I'm trying to live the life she gave me, even though it hurts every single day. Sometimes I wonder if I should have taken those pills, if surviving was worth it. If anything is worth it in a world where mothers can abandon their children and face no consequences. I don't have an answer, but I'm still here, and maybe that's enough. Maybe just existing, just surviving, just continuing to breathe in a world that tried to kill me. Maybe that's its own kind of victory, not the victory I wanted, not justice, not revenge, just endurance. Chiamaka died at 3 years old, trying to keep me warm. Mrs. Adaeze died loving someone who wasn't even her blood. Ikenna lives in poverty, creating beautiful things no one buys, but he keeps creating anyway. And I'm still here, telling this story to strangers on the internet, hoping that maybe someone out there will understand what it means to survive something you weren't supposed to survive. This isn't a story about revenge or justice or happy endings. This is a story about what it means to keep living when the person who should have loved you most chose not to. When the world is fundamentally unfair. When evil wins and good people lose, and there's no moral to the story except sometimes life is just cruel. My mother's name is Obiageli Ezinne Madu. She left me and my twin sister to die 25 years ago. She chose wealth over our lives. She got everything she wanted. She won. But I'm still here, and she'll never be able to take that away from me. My name is Chidinma Okonkwo. I am the daughter Obiageli couldn't kill. I am the sister who survived. I am the mistake that refused to disappear. And this is my story. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you're someone who's been abandoned, forgotten, or thrown away, I see you. You're not nothing. You never were. Hit subscribe if this story meant something to you, or don't. Either way, I'll still be here tomorrow, still surviving, still existing in defiance of everyone who wanted me gone. That's all we can do sometimes. Just endure.